Which sound card is best for music production? I want this video to be the ultimate resource for the beginner music producer in choosing your first sound card. So, this video consists of 3 parts. First of all, the part with the most frequently asked questions. The second part of this video, what do you have to look out for when you want to buy a sound card? And for the third part of this video, I did multiple polls on my community tab here on YouTube. And I polled my email subscribers. From the results of those polls, I compiled a top 5 of music producer recommendations of sound cards. The table of contents is in the description below. The frequently asked questions. Do I absolutely need a sound card for music production? Yes, you absolutely need a sound card, but most computers nowadays have an onboard sound card. If you want to start, that's just fine to start with. But if you advance and you want to connect a microphone, for example, or monitor speakers, and you want to have a low latency, then I would advise you to buy a separate, specialized sound card. Does an audio interface improve sound quality over an onboard sound card? Well, it of course depends a little bit on the sound card that you're comparing, but yes, mostly the dedicated music production hardware supports high resolution for recording and displaying music or sound. But especially when it comes to recording, then if you have proper preamps in your sound card, you can get a few steps ahead over an onboard sound card. What is the difference between regular sound cards and specialized music production sound cards? Well, first of all, music producers weren't on the mind of manufacturers of regular sound cards. You see that, for example, when it comes to latency. Latency is the time it needs for the computer to process a signal. For example, when you're talking to your microphone, how long does it take before it reaches your speaker? That delay, you want to have that as small as possible. Second of all, regular sound cards don't have support for the connection for your microphone and your monitor speakers. But a lot of microphones, when it comes to professional microphones like this condenser microphone, you need a connection that has a support for a 48-volt phantom power. Most regular sound cards don't have that. Music production cards are built to have a flat frequency response, meaning that all frequencies in the frequency spectrum are represented equally. Most regular sound cards tend to have dips or boosts in certain areas. You don't want that as a music producer. Most music production sound cards are external devices, so you can connect it, for example, to an Apple computer or to a laptop, so you can produce on the road or record on the road. What is the difference between a 24-bit signal on 96 kHz and 44.1 on 16 bits? What's up with all the numbers? Well, those numbers represent the resolution of the digital signal. When you record a band or a singer, you convert an analog signal to digital. But how much of that analog signal you store in digital information? The more digital information you store, the closer you come to the original analog signal. So the more quality you have. The more bits you have in your signal, the higher the resolution of the signal. Let's compare it to a photo, for example. A photo with more megapixels is sharper than a photo with less megapixels. So a 1 megapixel picture is less sharp than a 5 megapixel picture. The same for audio signals. The amount of bits represent how many pixels there are in a time frame when it comes to music. So 16 bits is less quality because it stored less information. A picture is one time frame, but a sound signal is an ongoing stream of information. So how many times per second do you want to store information? So 96 kHz means that a sound signal of 16 bits or 24 bits is stored 96,000 times per second. The more you store, the closer you come to that original analog signal. The higher the bits and hertz, the more processing power it needs from your processor and the more hard disk space it eats. I don't want to go into much detail here because it gets complicated very fast, but let me give you a reference. The old school audio CD was 44.1 kHz at 16 samples. For the millennials amongst us who don't know what a CD is, well, back in the 90s we had shiny discs that contained musical information. You can say the beta version of Spotify. And those were enough. 44.1 kilohertz, 16 samples was enough to listen music to. When it comes to music production or mastering or so, yeah, it may have some shortcomings, but for the beginner it's enough, and for listening purposes it's enough. At the moment, 192 kilohertz is the highest you can get on a sound card. If you record on higher resolutions, you have the luxury that you can scale down to lower the quality. But when you record or produce at a lower quality, you can never increase the sample rate, for example, to increase the quality. What do you have to look out for? First of all, a MIDI connection. If you have a MIDI keyboard that only connects via a MIDI connection. Most keyboards nowadays have a USB connection, so you don't have to worry about that. In the good old days, the interface to connect MIDI keyboards to a computer was the MIDI connection. So all MIDI keyboards had it and all sound cards had it. But nowadays, because all new keyboards are connected via USB, that MIDI connection got a little bit on the background, so most sound cards don't have that connection anymore. Then the connections. It gets a little bit confusing here, because the designers that made these standards clearly weren't having their best months, years. There are mainly two standards nowadays. There is the USB standard and the Thunderbolt standard. If you want to have a good, proper sound card with a low latency, go for a USB 3 or a Thunderbolt 3 sound card. The problem is that USB 3 can have a regular USB connection, but it can also have a USB-C connection. Same thing for Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt can have a USB-C connection but doesn't have to. Regretfully, you can't see which standard it supports by looking at the plug of a USB-C cable. When it comes to the standard, choose the latest standard, so USB 3 or Thunderbolt 3, because the data throughput is quicker and the latency is lower. If you want to buy a sound card, make sure that both your sound card and your computer support the same technology. And same for the cables and the plugs on those cables. Let's take a look at the connections on your sound card itself. When I want to connect monitor speakers, that's the most important feature of a sound card, you can connect it via a jack connection. In this case, I have an unbalanced connection. A balanced connection has an extra isolator in this plug. You want to have a balanced connection because a balanced connection makes sure that you have less interference in your cable. I have an unbalanced connection, so I can have interference. That's why the cables that I connected to my sound card are really short. So otherwise they will act as an antenna and pick up surrounding frequencies. This is such a sound card. This is the Focusrite 2i2. And on the front side we have the connection for your headphones. And as you see, this is a maxi jack connection. There is a volume button for your headphones, the regular volume button for your monitor speakers. Over here we have the button for the 48 volt phantom power. So if you want to use your condenser microphone. There is over here a button for the direct monitoring. When you record vocals, for example, you want to hear your voice directly in your headphones. Direct monitoring does not go through the computer because a computer adds latency to your signal. You don't want that with direct monitoring. You hear directly what is inputted in the sound card. Over here I have an input, and that can be a jack connection or an XLR connection for your guitar, for example, or your microphone. And if you use a condenser microphone, you can hook it up here and switch on the 48 volt phantom power. Then over here is the volume button. There is no real level meter in this sound card, but this ring will light up green when it's okay, when it receives a signal, and red if it clips, so if there's distortion in the signal. And you can switch here between the line or an instrument, because an instrument has less power, so it needs to amplify more. This is one, but this is the other. Those are two of the same connections. These are mono connections, by the way. So you can have a microphone for left, microphone for right. If you want to have both, you have to connect both. On the back side of at least this sound card, it depends totally on which sound card you have, how many inputs, how many outputs you have. There you have the jack connections, as I talked about earlier. I have two, one for the left speaker, one for the right speaker, and this is the USB connection, and this is the Kensington lock, so you can lock it to your desk, for example. Connect the left speaker, connect the right speaker, and connect USB. This sound card has only a USB connection, and it gets its power via the USB connection. A lot of sound cards don't have that option and have a separate power brick. And this is such an XLR connection, and this is my microphone, and I connect it to the sound card this way. I don't use the 48 Phantom power because it's my voiceover microphone I use for my YouTube videos. If it's all a little bit overwhelming, don't worry about it. I will put a checklist in my free music producer ebook. The link to the free download is in the description below. Then latency. You want to have a card with the lowest latency possible. Latency is the delay of a sound signal from creation to reaching your ear. For example, when you record a vocal, then a singer sings into the microphone. That sound signal has to travel through the microphone, through the sound card, through the computer with all the effects, delay, reverb, etc. Back to the sound card again, to the speakers, and then before it reaches your ear. How much time does that take? The lower the latency, the more convenient it is. But the lower the latency, the harder your computer has to work in order to process that signal in time. So you need a pretty beefy computer to cope with that. In your DAW you can set your sample rate. The lower your sample rate, the quicker the process flows through your computer, but the more system resources it eats from your computer. So if you have an older computer, you have to have a higher latency, because otherwise your computer can't cope with it. Then preamps. Look for a sound card with good preamps, because good preamps determine the recording quality of your microphone, of your sound card. And one last thing before we go on to our top 5. Good quality doesn't need to be expensive. You might be inclined to think that you need $1,000 for a good sound card. No, that's absolutely not the case. $150, you have a great sound card. Then the top 5. What do music producers recommend? I compiled all the results of my polls here on YouTube and the results of my email list subscribers. By the way, if you aren't subscribed to my email list yet, do that now. You get music production tips in your emails. Link is in the description below. So, what do other music producers say? The top 5. By the way, the links to all the sound cards are in the description below. Number 5 on the list is the Tascam 16x8. This quality sound card of Tascam is one of the bigger sound cards in this list. It fits perfectly in the 19-inch rack. It is popular because it has many in and outputs for a decent price. The sound card has 16 inputs, 8 XLR microphone inputs with switchable phantom power support, and 8 balanced jack inputs, of which you can use 2 as guitar inputs. The sound card is compatible with Windows, Mac and iOS. It supports 24-bit recording at 96 kHz, and you connect it via the old school USB 2 connection with a USB-B plug. Worth mentioning is that the card has MIDI connections. The price of the card is around the $250 mark. The link to the card is in the description below. Number 4 on the list is the Presonus Audiobox USB 96. Small and compact is the USB 96 from Presonus. It's one of the budget models of Presonus, but it's pretty popular amongst music producers. The price mark is around $100. The build quality of the sound card with this steel chassis is solid. The Audiobox USB 96 has a MIDI connection to connect your MIDI keyboard and has a USB 2 connection to hook it up to your computer. The sound card is powered via USB, so you don't have to have a separate power brick, which makes it a perfect companion for mobile recording. But you're out of luck when you want to record on your iPad. The sound card only supports Mac and Windows. With a name like the USB 96, you might suspect it supports 96 kHz recording, and indeed it does, with a bit depth of 24-bit. The sound card has a pair of jack monitor outputs, MIDI in and out, a headphone jack, balanced XLR microphone inputs with a 48V phantom power, and 2 jack unbalanced instrument connections. Because it is Presonus hardware, you get a simplified version of Studio One with the sound card. The link to the sound card is in the description below. Number 3. The Audient ID14. I wholeheartedly agree with number 3 on this list, the Audient ID14. The sound cards support 24-bit 96 kHz signal processing. The sound card has sound level indicators which most audio interfaces lack. The sound interface has also an optical input which a lot of sound cards lack. The main difference between its smaller brother, the ID4, is the quality of the preamps. But the preamps of the ID14 need more power than its little brother, so the ID14 has a separate power brick and the ID4 has not. Furthermore, the sound card has a USB 2 Type B connection. One microphone jack, but the volume of that microphone jack is not controlled by a separate volume knob, which is a little bit clunky. You can switch the 48V phantom power on or off per channel, which is handy. The sound card has one pair of jack outputs for your monitor speakers and 2 XLR balanced microphone connections, combined with balanced jack inputs for an instrument like a guitar. You can't use the sound card with iOS, and the card has no support for MIDI. The price range of the card is about $200. One of the first videos I uploaded to this channel was a review of the ID14. Check it out, the link is in the description. Numero 2, the Native Instruments Komplete Audio 2. Super popular amongst music producers is the Native Instruments Komplete Audio 2. The engineers at Native Instruments have an extremely hard time coming up with original product names, because everything is called Komplete and it's even spelled wrong. Also popular is its smaller brother, the Komplete Audio 1, which is a simple sound card that you can connect via USB 2 Type B connection with your computer with a K. The sound card has only one XLR microphone input, which is switchable with a 48V phantom power, and one instrument input. It has one pair of unbalanced monitor outputs over, well, wait for it, Kinch! The Komplete Audio 2, with a K, is more complete, with a K. You connect it also via USB 2 Type B, and it has one pair of proper balanced jack outputs. The inputs are XLR and jack combined connections, with a switch to select your microphone or instrument. Nice is the mix knob for direct monitoring and a separate volume knob for your headphone, which you can connect via a jack connection. Where this card jumps out in contrast to the rest of this list is the 24-bit 192 kHz signal processing instead of the regular 96 kHz. The card has also proper volume level indicators, but no MIDI connection. The price range of the Komplete Audio 1 is about $100 and the Komplete Audio 2 $130. Before I jump into number 1 in this list of the top 5 best sound cards for music producers, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more music production beginner tutorials. Numero 1. The Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. Yeah, you might be inclined to think that it is on number 1 because I have one, but it's the other way around. I know it's the most popular sound card for music producers, so I bought one too. Yay! The Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 supports a bit depth of 24-bit at a sample rate of 192 kHz instead of the regular 96 kHz. I do have to mention that it has no MIDI connection, and it is a sound card with one of the lowest latencies in the market. The audio interface has two combined XLR jack inputs for instruments and microphones with a 48V switchable phantom power. Two jack outputs for monitor speakers, but no MIDI connection. The card is powered via USB, and I like the fact that the card is plug and play on macOS. I own the 2nd Gen 2i2, but the 3rd Gen is already out. There are minor differences between the two, but these differences were so small that I didn't feel the need to upgrade. Most striking is the connection. It has a USB 3 connection with a USB-C plug, which makes it possible to have even less latency than all the other USB 2 sound cards in this list. I also want to do some honorable mentions. First of all, Apollo, the twin sound card, the Steinberg sound cards, the Arturia Audiofuse, Army with the Babyface, and Apogee. The problem with Apogee sound cards is that their sound cards are good, but their drivers are not publicly available on their website. The problem is that Apple updates their operating system every single year. If you update, you need new drivers for your sound card because your sound card doesn't work anymore. Problem with that is, if you lost your login, yay! Then you can't download your drivers, and your sound card is registered and connected with your login. In order to process all the resolutions of those high quality recordings, you need a fast computer. But what is a good computer for music production? Check out this video right here. I'll advise you on that. If you're interested in equipment, check out this video right here. And if you're serious about music production and want to take a music production course, check out the link here in the screen. Thank you for watching, and I'd love to see you in the next one. Bye.